Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today. You have joined the webinar called Get Creative Commons Certified, brought to you by the Midwestern Higher Education Compact. I wanted to remind you all of a few things before we get started. First of all, we are recording this webinar as we record all of our webinars, and it will be available for you with other resources on the MEC website. You would just look on the post-event part of the website or in the OER section of the policy and research page. If you would like to submit questions while you are during the webinar today, please use the Q&A function, not the chat function. We will be monitoring the Q&A functions and we'll make sure that we get your questions answered either verbally in the webinar or privately via the Q&A exchange itself. And then finally, when you receive your post-webinar email, it will include information about where to find the recording and all the information, but it'll also have a little survey. We ask kindly that you please complete that survey so that we know if our webinar today is meeting your needs and what additional needs we might meet in the future with this type of a broadcast. So once again, welcome to Get Creative Commons Certified. I'm your moderator today. My name is Jenny Parks. I'm the VP of Policy and Research at MEC, and we are enjoying the work we've been doing now for over a year in collaboration with Creative Commons. We're so excited to have them back. Next slide, please. Just wanted to remind you all, if you're not familiar, we do have a contract with Creative Commons. You would just navigate to mec.org/Creative Commons. You can use this QR code. I'm provided you the contract number there, but you absolutely don't need it to take advantage of the contract. We'll be showing you in a little while how to use the code our special code that we have with Creative Commons, and you'd use that on their interactive online portal. Essentially, the contract allows for a 15% discount on for existing and custom CC licensing professional learning opportunities, and that would be for staff and institutional members of the Midwestern Higher Education Compact and its sister compacts. So this is available to folks in all states except New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and New York because they are not compact members. We miss you guys, but this is something that the compacts are doing in conjunction with each other to bring better OER awareness and expertise to our constituents. So please go ahead if you are interested after you take a look at this webinar, go ahead and self-register online at the CC certificate course website. There's some introductions down there for you. The MEC promo code is MEC15. So let's keep going and I'll just tell you a little bit more about what we're going to do today and who would use this contract. And we're going to hear from some folks who had this kind of training and how it has improved their OER practice. So first of all, who might want to take advantage of this type of training and use this contract? It could be faculty, instructors, graduate students, librarians, library staff, instructional designers and technologists, directors and staff of Centers for Teaching and Learning, and of course, academic leadership, provosts, deans, chairs, directors. This is the type of training we're talking about coming from Creative Commons. Gives you a really deep dive into understanding copyright so that you can be kind of a mini expert on your campus and really help assuage people's fears. We know from research that for some faculty, they are intrepid as they move into OER because of concerns about intellectual property and copyright. And it might be just that they don't know how to adapt or properly attribute things. But regardless, if you go through some of these training with Creative Commons, you're not going to have that ambiguity in your understanding. You're going to be able to offer great advice to folks. Next slide, please. So if you do have any questions about the contract when this is all over, you can learn more on the MEC website, and you can, of course, contact me at the information we've provided right there. Next slide. So I want to tell you a little bit about our presenters today and let them start talking to you. First of all, we are joined by Jenren Wetzler. She's the Director of Learning and Training at Creative Commons. She will be telling us about the training and all of the opportunities there. Then we're going to hear from Rob Gibson, the Director of Learning Technologies at Emporia State University. He's going to share his experience with the training and with using this on his campus. And we're also going to be joined by Jennifer England, the academic technologist at the University of Minnesota, who will be sharing with us some similar insights and experiences. Next slide. All right, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jenren.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just delighted to be here and really grateful for the chance to partner with MEC. And so glad that we have some graduates here, and the graduates we have, both Rob and Jennifer, are not just our regular Cert graduates, but they are also facilitators in our courses. So we're very grateful to have them. I know Anika is also here with MEC, was also a graduate of our program. So very glad to have you all here. And I'm going to try to minimize what I say so I can leave as much time as possible for their experience and your direct questions to them in case you want to just ask what it's like. So to give you a little bit of sense about Creative Commons first, we're a global nonprofit organization, and we help build and sustain a thriving commons of shared knowledge and culture online. So we're probably best known for our CC licenses. We have 6 CC licenses and 2 public domain tools. These are on 9 million websites and counting, anything from Flickr to Pixabay to YouTube and more. So the licenses are probably what you may be more familiar with, but we also conduct a number of different advocacy and capacity building programs, including the CC certificate. And we consider the CC certificate a community empowerment program, essentially. It actually got started because of a need we saw coming out of a $2 billion Department of Labor grant called the TACT grant. It was TAACCCT, terrible acronym, but wonderful grant that had an open license requirement. So this granted community and technical colleges funding to create trade-related and technical training that needed to be openly licensed and shared with others. Because of that, there was a huge interest in developing open licensing expertise at these different institutions that were enacting the grant. So from that, we started working with our partners and developing a pilot training, and have since iterated a number of times on what we can offer today. So our goal now with the CC certificate training program is to train as many people around the world as possible on open licensing, open practices, and copyright, so that more people can freely share and take advantage of open knowledge content. So I'll tell you a little bit about the details of the CERT course, but if you at any time just want a refresher, you can simply go to our website, which is certificates.creativecommons.org. And I'm going to actually put the, thank you so much, Mary. We've got the link right there in the chat for you. So the certificate is a 10-week online course or a 1-week in-person boot camp, also an online boot camp for anybody who's interested. We offer it in January, June, and September of every year, and it's really open to everybody. So anyone can enroll. We have 3 particular tracks though. So the courses are geared toward either educators, academic librarians, or our cultural heritage folks in galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. We see a lot of diversity in terms of the audiences in our educator course, but really we welcome everybody to any of the 3 courses. Each of the courses has 5 units, most of it which are asynchronous. So they involve quizzes and discussions and assignments and so on, but we also offer synchronous Q&A webinars with copyright lawyers and open licensing advocates and so on. We have ideally a 25-to-1 participant to facilitator ratio, or student to teacher ratio in our courses. We're trying to keep them as small as possible. Oftentimes the number is smaller than 25 per one facilitator. And really what we're trying to do is make a flexible course for anyone to engage in and use homework, use discussions and so on to really help them in their daily work. So your success is our success. We have really wonderful facilitators, including Rob and Jennifer, who really go out of their way to support participants and help them create assignments and projects that would really serve them, and then iterate on them where needed. So our goal is to pass everybody that we can. And we're also built to iterate. So this program is revised. Mostly the reading content is slightly revised each year, but also we make tweaks and improvements on the instructional design. We're happy to hopefully be able to debut some additional translations this year. So a lot of our reading content's translated in multiple languages. we're going to be offering additional scholarships to folks in the cultural heritage sector coming up. And then we also hope to integrate more open pedagogy elements into our work. So we already focus on open pedagogy, making this as engaging and useful to participants, even beyond the particular minutia of the course, the homework and so on. We want to make this mean something more to people, but we're going to be emphasizing that more in this coming year. So I'm really looking forward to hopefully working with you all in an upcoming course. Right now, I think I'll just quickly screen share to give you a better sense of what this might look like. Okay, so here you can see, hopefully, can I just get I guess a hands up or something if you can't see. Okay, great. Thanks. You can see our website. This is a great spot to go to if you want to register. You can just click on the registration link and go right down to the course offering. If you want to get a sense of what content you'll be covering, you can read through all of our openly licensed reading materials already. So we update the content, we make it available each year. We also have a publication that's openly licensed and freely available, which kind of combines the educator and library section. And then we have examples of what participants have made over the course of the years that we've been running this. So I'm going to jump ahead, and I did want to show you one example of a recent participant's assignment that it made me laugh out loud at my desk. So this was posted a little bit over a week ago. Someone, for their first assignment, made a Lego classroom and really got into the, just click on it, really got into the pedagogy. So I'll just play a quick second of this.
Now, moving on. You already know a bit about copyright. It's a lumbersome beast that's struck.
Anyway, he delights in copyright. So do I. I feel like it's always wonderful to see the really creative things that our participants come up with in their assignments. And we really try to foster that creativity and the flexibility to take the assignments in whatever direction they want to. But then we also recognize that people have day jobs and may just need to cover the bare bones basics, and we respect that too. So, all right, let me just really quickly give you a sense of what it looks like in Canvas. I have a kind of a mock course shell up here to give you a sense. So basically you would be doing most of all of your graded work in Canvas. You would scroll through the readings and read through watch the videos, read through the infographics and so on. And then after each section, you would take a quiz that's ungraded. And then you'd also be able to fill out your assignments and have some discussions with participants too. But outside of Canvas, we really try to emphasize the wonderful opportunities that you have to connect, not just on Slack to our global community, but also in our different community activities. So our different, we call them platforms, but different ways of engaging in open advocacy, whether it's in education or copyright or cultural heritage or more. So these are just kind of a few things I wanted to leave you with. I'm really looking forward to what comes out of this collaboration with MEC, and I'm happy to be on hand for any questions that you might have. I'm going to pull back right now, though, and field this over to Rob and Jennifer.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. It's great to be here to talk about the certificate program. I'm Jennifer England. I work, study, and sometimes teach at the University of Minnesota. And, and just kind of thinking about how my involvement with their certificate program has improved OER practice, as Jenny mentioned in her introduction. And I kind of think about it in each of those three areas, right? So my full-time, most of my day-to-day activities are really in my instructional design role. And in that, I've worked with a number of instructors who are working on OER projects, sometimes or most often actually, I've worked with instructors who have just found out about OER on their own, and they either want to dip their toe into it, or they're already off on the deep end creating video textbooks or these amazing resources. And so OER projects tend to take on all sorts of really varied shapes and sizes, which is kind of fun, and always keeps me on my toes and whatnot. And I've also been fortunate to be involved in some of the affordable learning projects that used to be coordinated through an internal grant opportunity through our libraries. So it really takes a lot of shapes and sizes and dimensions and whatnot in terms of what OER looks like on our campus. There was one other piece that I also wanted to mention too, just in terms of, as well, I think it's important to talk about OER and working with resources and faculty work too. As an instructional designer, I also want to put that into practice. And so I have worked with members on my team to encourage us to collectively apply an open license to, whether it's our slides for webinars or any types of resources that we may release to the university community or beyond that. And we've also adapted a number of OER resources. For example, when we went through a learning management system transition a number of years ago, we adapted an OER resource that another instructional design team had created and put our own university context in with it. So, thinking about how can we apply licenses on a hopefully day-to-day basis too, as instructional designers, is another piece that I have really benefited in working into my work as a result of going through the Cert program. I went through it about 4 years ago. I went through the Cert course for educators. I think, and Jen had mentioned there's 3 different tracks for it. And I think if there are any other instructional designers, or if you work with instructional designers, that might be the track that might be most closely suited, because that is the one that talks about open pedagogy and open educational practices, in addition, of course, to the tenets of open licensing and OER and whatnot. So I just wanted to put that out in case other folks are thinking about, well, there's these great options. How do I find out the one that really works for me and is going to be most relevant to my work? And I'm going to kind of popcorn around here too, because I do have a couple different, I do kind of wear a lot of hats and flip-flop in between roles. But the other piece that I wanted to say is really to think about, or I guess I should back up for a moment. And Jen had mentioned a little bit about the community empowerment piece for Creative Commons. And I had found that when I went through the course initially to be very true. Like I came in with a kind of a general knowledge of open licenses, but there were certainly others who were very, very experienced in terms of already leading OER projects or having a very extensive knowledge of copyright, or maybe actually those who went through formal legal training. And the course and the community was really a space where everyone, regardless of where you're starting out, where you're coming from, it was a space where people could ask questions and no one was, there wasn't a question that was, too small, or there wasn't a, kind of a fear or hesitancy of asking questions too. So I'd say if that might be another thing that folks might be thinking of, when jumping into something new, I would say, please don't worry about doing that, because it is a very welcoming community and people are very receptive to sharing their knowledge and sharing experiences, and also pointing folks towards other resources too that either they have encountered in their journey, or maybe project that they're working on. And I guess the last piece that I will say is that the course when I went through it, and it continues to be very receptive and strongly focused in terms of how can the assignments and final projects be as relevant as possible to the work that people are doing, either already doing in a daily practice or work, you know, that you're planning to do. So that is the other piece too, that it is as relevant, as practicable, and as applicable as possible to the participants and to our daily work. So with that, there's a lot more I could say, but I will turn it over to Rob for now.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Jenra. It's great to be with you this afternoon and talking to you a bit about my experience with the program. I was super excited to hear about, we're a member of the Compact. I'm at Emporia State, and I've done some work with the Compact in some other sorts of presentation capacities. And so I was really excited to hear about this partnership with Creative Commons, because I can already selfishly see a lot of advantages that we can leverage on our campus. Like Jennifer, I think I went through the program originally about 3 or 4 years ago, and then Jenren invited me to go to the next level, the next step, and go into the facilitator training program, and which I'm super excited about. And I actually just taught my first course, or facilitated my first course this last spring. So I'm still kind of consider myself a little bit of a newbie. There's other folks that are pretty well versed in this area that I kind of really admire and look up to in the program. They're just awesome. But all of my I lead a team of learning designers, and this is, you know, Creative Commons is so important to as a foundational element that I actually require all of them to go through the facilitator training program. And if they can't, you know, sneak into the instructional designer track, then the librarian track is equally as good. I find them both just excellent. They just got a little bit different flavor or twist to them, but the information I think is still pretty much foundational in both programs and both tracks, and either one of them is fantastic. But we are just now starting to get some traction with open educational resources on our campus, and having a little bit of a chargeback system to our students in the form of a small fee. And I am planning to parlay that fee into some compulsory Creative Commons training for a lot of our folks in stakeholder positions across campus. And so this is going to be kind of part of our culture going forward. So I'm just, I feel that strongly about the program. Jim, talked a little bit about the components. I won't go into great detail on that. There's 5 components. The first one deals with, you know, really what is Creative Commons, where it came from, going back to the Berne Convention, and kind of giving you a little bit of the history, which is absolutely fascinating if you've never explored much of that, and how that all came to fruition back, yes, back in the early 90s now, I think is when it was, if I'm not mistaken. Unit 2 it goes into a little bit about copyright law, and this is a great primer for anybody who is not particularly well versed with copyright. And it's just a really wonderful unit to give you a lot of that foundational background on copyright. Now, we're always quick to say that we are not attorneys, and we don't make any sort of legal proclamation when it comes to this sort of thing. There are people who are attorneys and who are versed in that we defer to, but we at least, you know, work within the contours of what the copyright law says in the course or the program. Unit 3 goes through a very detailed analysis of the anatomy of the licenses, which is all the different variants and flavors of Creative Commons licenses, how they are assembled, what they mean, how they're applied. It's a great detail. And by the way, just a FYI, I teach in a graduate program as well. And I feel so strongly about that I actually give my students a quick crash course in Creative Commons, and I make them apply a Creative Commons license to all of their work. Now, they haven't gone through the program, so they don't know all the, you know, the details, but there are resources on the Creative Commons website, which are just wonderful for even a newbie. and they can at least get, some understanding of that. And there's a wonderful license chooser, which has been made available, with which they surface for us, which is great for being able to sort of pick your own license flavor, that kind of thing. So I give them a crash course on all that. I make them, utilize Creative Commons in all their work, so they understand that, because they're gonna likely bump into it. You see it in a lot of different places. Unit 4 gets into some licensing and license works, and Unit 5 gets into more of the details for, in my particular course, it was for librarians. The instructional designer track has a little bit more of a flavor toward, the instructional design track. But yeah, no, this is, I'll just kind of look at my notes. Oh, real quickly, I want to make sure this is a really important point, that we really encourage, in fact, this is just a wonderful way to structure the program, and I applaud Creative Commons for this, but the assignments are designed to be very applied, and they're designed to give students the latitude, or the learners the latitude, to be able to pick and choose whatever whatever assignment type, rather, that they would like to utilize to satisfy the objectives of that particular assignment. So be that a infographic or a video or a podcast or a slide deck, whatever, we give them that latitude to be able to use their creative juices to assemble that using whatever tools and resources they think are going to be able to convey that information most effectively. So it's a wonderful application that we utilize in higher education quite a bit, called Voice and Choice, giving the learners the choice of the apparatus or the tool to be able to satisfy their assignment. So it's just it's a very satisfying, and by the way, when you do that, you see just a wonderful wealth of different types of assignment types. There, people's creative juices get to flowing, and you would be amazed at the types of things which people submit that are wonderful. I had one learner this last session I taught that that actually did a sort of a pantomime kind of thing. She didn't use any voice. She used images that she had created or drawn out, and actually did the whole thing without any sort of audio whatsoever. She just did, flipped pages to actually illustrate her project. I thought it was very creative. But anyway, so I think we'd like to entertain some questions now. I'll turn it back over to Jinren.
Thanks so much. I feel like I couldn't have planted two better advertisements for the Cert. Just kidding. I'm so glad that you're both facilitators and that you also got so much out of the training for your day jobs. So right now we have plenty of time to take any questions that you might have about the actual training, or if you're willing, we would love to hear what kinds of challenges you might be facing around open licensing or otherwise in your day-to-day. And also, if there are no questions, then we'll pat ourselves on the back and feel like we've done a good job covering everything. But I just want to give it one extra moment and ask Jennifer and Rob, do you remember, was there maybe one thing that surprised you in transitioning from being a participant in the course to then teaching the course? Like, was there anything that kind of surprised you going around the second time?
For me, yeah, thank you for that question, Jennifer. Yeah, this was a pleasant surprise, I guess, and it probably shouldn't have surprised me, but there are folks that go through the program, that participate in the program, that come from such a interesting variety of backgrounds and areas. It's a very international program. I had people from various countries who are participating in the program. So you get a very international flavor and perspective, which is wonderful to have that variety. But also just within the higher education landscape, you also see people who are participating everywhere from community colleges through smaller liberal arts colleges to larger R1s, and everything in between. So you get this wonderful variety in that vertical of all sorts of people who are doing very interesting work. Now, some people come at it that are fairly new, and they, this is all sort of new to them. This is a new world. But we have other people who are much further along the continuum and are extremely well versed in this area. And I almost had to sort of question myself, like, oh, you should be where I'm at, right? You're way better at this than I am. But you really, I think that breadth and depth of participants in the program and their backgrounds and where they come from. As I recall, I had several people from Canada that were in this program, and Canadian copyright laws are completely different than United States laws. And so they were, sort of sharing some of that perspective as well. That to me, I think, was a pleasant surprise to see that wealth of participation in the program and that sort of that cross section of participants. And I just was blown away. It was, every time I got in, it was just incredible. It was just a delight to work with these people. So that would be my response.
Thanks so much. I'm also very surprised to always find I learned something. No matter how many times we've run this course, I feel like each semester I learned something new. We work with really wonderful people, both on the participant side and also at the facilitator side. Jennifer, did you have any thoughts?
I did, but I think Jenny might be, did you have something you wanted to share?
Yeah, I was just
Jenny,
going to jump in. We do have a question in the Q&A section. And the question is there a registration deadline for the September session?
Yes, thank you for that question. So we open courses 6 months in advance of their start date, and then we close registration 1 week in advance of the course start date. So just keep that. I think the September course starts on the 23rd. I have to double check. So 1 week prior to that. I'm just going to double check right now. September 26th. Thank you for that question.
All right, just checking to make sure there weren't other questions or chat. But I think the piece that I have appreciated, and I think this will kind of tie into your question, Jenren, but so what I have really appreciated is just the acknowledgement and willingness on Creative Commons part to be able to really acknowledge and address and kind of wrestle with topics that participants and facilitators are bringing up. And that might take the place of, small things like, hey, I noticed there's some knowledge checks quizzes built into the course too, which are really helpful. So maybe one of the response options for the quiz is a little bit confusing, or, so it could be something, smaller like that. But really, it also extends to these really large, broad topics about wrestling with knowledge and what does it mean on a global level to have copyright and who gets to own knowledge and whatnot. For example, last week, I think it was, we had a guest presenter who talked about decolonizing knowledge, and that wasn't, that's been a new addition since I originally went through the program. So it's topics like that, and really being able to hold space for participants also, because as both Rob and Jennifer mentioned, this is a global organization. We have global facilitators, participants, all of that. And so to really bring up these questions about, well, licenses are shepherded by an organization, located in a particular place in a particular part of the country. And what does that really mean for other countries and other indigenous organizations and people working with tribal and traditional knowledge and all of those sorts of questions. So that's been something that I have really appreciated and continue to value, and I'm very glad to be able to have those opportunities to participate in that.
Jen, I just want to share just real quickly, mechanically speaking, we use two technologies in the program. The content is sort of hosted in Canvas, which is where the modules reside and the quizzes and that sort of thing, the didactic content. And then we default to Slack for a lot of the communication. And the advantage of that, I think, is that we then get a chance through Slack, because Slack doesn't restrict the conversation to just that particular cohort, right? So if you were just working in Canvas, you'd only be able to communicate with people in that particular Canvas course. Whereas with Slack, it is open up to the entire Creative Commons community. So we get a chance to discuss topics sort of across those cohorts. And folks who have been in the program before will chime in. And most importantly, the folks such as Jen Wren and the legal team will jump in on questions. And there's always, that's really the most interesting thing of all, I think, is to me, is the legal side of all of this, because that's a fascinating area. It's very complex, and people will post questions in Slack about various sorts of legal nuances, things, how to interpret law in various areas, that sort of thing. And it's always fascinating to listen to the legal team offer their words of wisdom about, how you would interpret that particular type of thing, or how you would go about conducting yourself in that situation. So the Slack channel, I think, is great because it provides that opportunity to have almost like this conversation, kind of this global conversation with people from all different areas of the program. So I just want you to understand a little bit about how the mechanics of that all work, because there's kind of two parts, but they both work in tandem very nicely.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I was just looking at the latest conversations in our Slack channel, and they involve Venn diagrams of what is considered a copyright violation versus plagiarism, the differences between adaptation and citation and more. Anyway, it's always something really interesting, and that's where I learn the most, is in our Slack channel. So
I think that's what I've heard from folks who've engaged in these training processes. They become part of a community that doesn't stop when the course ends. They stay part of that collective conversation and continue to learn. So again, that's another value add there that's really, really important. Totally in line with what MEC likes to do. We like to get people connected to the things that just help them stay connected and maintain the highest level of practice. I did want to answer another question that came to me. Someone had asked, Rob, what do you mean that your institution is a member of MEC? And so I wanted to make sure that I clarified for everyone that all institutions that are in the Midwestern states are served by MEC. I mean, if we want to get really, really technical and legal, our states are our members. And by our states being members, your institution is granted the wonderful thing that is MEC. We're there for you. You're kind of by default our clientele and our constituency. So thank you for asking that question, in case there were others who did not know much about MEC or know about how we work. We're here for you. So, and we have programs and contracts of all other sorts too. So anytime you want to find out about that, take a look at our website or just reach out to me. I'm happy to help you with that. I'm wondering if we have any more questions or conversation that we want to make sure that we take some time to hear. Well,
I added my email address to the discussion. Sure. So if there's anything that comes up afterward, please don't hesitate to reach out. We're always eager to take additional questions or communicate with you about opportunities.
Likewise, here at MEC, I'll note that Mary just placed in the chat a link to the part of our website where you can go and sign up for all kinds of information. For those of you who aren't aware, we do except for the summer, a monthly OER newsletter for the Midwest. And we try always to include information about the wonderful things happening at our member institutions. If you're doing something great, or if you have some questions to ask, please just send it to me. We are really eager to facilitate that collective conversation as well, and make sure that you know you do have a community of support. So someone else is asking, would it be off topic to hear an update about MEC and our OER work? No, not at all. So for those of you who are and are not aware of the work we've been doing, we've been working with OER since 2018. We kicked it off with a big regional convening in November of that year, and that was sponsored by the Hewlett Foundation. And then we started up having a series of state OER action teams that are still up and running. In 2 of those, we actually have seen them kind of transform into something much more formal. Kansas being one place where the Board of Regents now has the OER steering committee, and in Michigan where they have kind of made their own independent organization, the Michigan OER. And then some of the other states where they're moving in that direction. In the case of Ohio, they already had Ohio Link. So we're building on these pieces everywhere. And that's our goal, is to make sure each state has the infrastructure it needs. We're joined today by Annika Manny, who has been working with us too for the last couple of years. With our OER work, we received an additional grant from the Hewlett Foundation in concert with the other regional compacts under the umbrella of what's called NCOER, which is the National Coalition for Open Educational Resources. We're just finishing that first grant in the round of activities, and some of the activities included research. We did some research on the use of OER in concurrent enrollment programs. We have done research on which was national in scope, where we were trying to figure out, okay, is there a way that we can come to some type of increased consistency in the way we report on cost savings for OER, because we know that that's kind of all over the place. And anytime that you can't do apples to apples comparisons, it ends up being a little bit difficult for policymakers to digest that and understand the impact. So we have a paper out on that, and we've been doing lots of presentations on that. Annika was kind enough to share in the chat where you can go on our website to see a lot of those resources. Some of the other things we've been doing is we sponsored and facilitated online OER summits at our in many of our states. We did some Open Education Network leadership training, and we purchased an OEN state membership for 2 of our states. And we even in one state, we helped them with funding for a grant program for faculty, where they tried to change some things up, brought it to matching funds, etc. In our next round of funding, which we anticipate starting in the fall, we'll be doing some similar things. We are trying to make sure that each of our states gets to tell us, okay, here's really what we need in Nebraska or Wisconsin or Ohio. These are the things we need, and we try to find the resources and make the connections for them to have that. So, stay tuned for more. Sign up for the OER newsletter. There are a lot of recorded webinars there too. And Mary shared a link to that cost savings paper. In the next round of the research, we're going to be looking at best practices and a step-by-step manual for course marking at your institution, perhaps in your system. And then better yet, once you've got that done and it looks kind of similar at other institutions, how do you take that and track student outcomes? So now you're not only reporting on all the money it saves students, you're also reporting on throughput rates, how many DFWs you were, how long, time to completion, etc. Many of the other it's really easy to see how much money people save. It's this other piece that actually is the value add. And then hopefully if we get a third round of funding, we're going to be then looking at those even deeper culturally significant returns on the use of OER and open pedagogy. And as you've all mentioned, with Indigenous populations, epistemology, who owns knowledge, who produces it, who gets a say in it, how are we sharing these things, and how are we democratizing the knowledge business, essentially. So those are some of the things we're doing. We're staying pretty busy. So thank you for asking that, Jennifer. And again, if you want to know more, contact me and take a look on our website.
And Jenny, if I may just take a moment, I'm sorry. Thank you so much for your support here in Kansas, you actually helped us with that OER conference back in February now, I think it was,
Yeah.
in conjunction with our Board of Regents. And that was a very successful effort. Lots of people were very interested in that and great participation. And just really appreciate your support on helping to push the envelope on open educational resources at the state level.
Well, thank you.
Because of your efforts, our Board of Regents now, I think, has started to really get some momentum to help to support some of the initiatives at the ground level,
Awesome.
and start to do some funding. And looks like we're maybe looking at, I heard tell that we might be getting some licensing for some products that will help us to actually build
Oh my
OERs.
gosh,
So,
that's
but that's all
fantastic.
that's really as a result of you and your organization. And I
Oh,
really
thank
appreciate your
you.
support on that.
Well, you bet. Well, and let us know if there's anything we can help with that. One of the things we also did was run a series of conversations on products, vendors, and technologies associated with OER. Those are some of the most interesting things on the website. We had the OER community of the Midwest come together and kind of figure out and ideate what is the OER that touches, what is the technology that touches OER look like? And they created this diagram in a mural board. And then we shared that with some of the folks in who provided some of the products. And it was a really great conversation. We're like, oh, no, that's not the structure of the marketplace. And we're like, well, it is to them. So you can imagine that's really rich for them to think about how to think about the space. We didn't do any contracting in that space except for Creative Commons, because it is still such a rapidly evolving market. But we are going to do more with that in this next round of funding because it's so valuable. And so, yes, please let us know. MEC is good at contracts. So anytime you've got a wish list, at least let us know. We'll think about it. Thank you, Rob. That was really nice of you to say that. And Mary has given us the link, or Veronica, I didn't see who, to those OER, those conversations with the vendors. So, well, if that is it, I know we can all use an extra 14 minutes in the week. And so I appreciate everyone being here. Please look for that survey, the follow-up materials. And as always, the MEC is here to help you do your very best. All right. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much.